Today's Take30 session, we're going to be focusing on the retail industry, specifically how QuickSight and QuickSight Q, which is one of the Amazon tools for BI, has been helping to transform the retail industry. We're also going to talk about some of the trends that we see in this space so far. A little bit about our insight as a company. We've been in business for over 25 years. 5 of those years, we've been an advanced consulting partner with AWS. We have helped over 750 clients across multiple different industries in all sorts of areas of IT and data. So if anything there is of interest, please reach out. We'll have some information there towards the end of the presentation where you can get in contact with us. Also wanted to mention, if you want to look at previous or upcoming Take30s, we do many of these with all different kinds of topics and details and technologies. You can go to ironsightgroup.com/resources, and you can watch videos from any past Take30 and also stay up to date, excuse me, with any of the upcoming sessions as well. Next slide, please. All right, I'll let Brian introduce himself.
Sure. I'm Brian Platt. I'm the director of our data science practice here at Ironside. Good to meet you all.
And I'm Eduardo Razo. I'm an engagement manager in the data strategy practice for Ironside, but also wear a couple of different hats as a solution engineer and work across many different verticals across our data lifecycle. All right, next slide, please. So for today's session, again, we're going to be focusing on technology in the retail industry. We're going to be talking about a very exciting game changer that we're seeing now with many different clients and with trends in the retail industry itself called Generative BI. Brian will go into more depth with these technologies and what it means and what it does here in a few minutes. But we are going to use some actual demonstrations and examples for analysis that are currently being done with the retail industry. That's going to focus on 3 main things, but we're going to touch on a couple other topics as well. And then we're going to start closing up with some key takeaways and then some Q&A. So as the presentation goes on, if you do have questions either right now or you have any thoughts or questions as the demo or the presentation is going on, please drop them in the chat and we will review all those at the end and hopefully get you some good answers for that as well. So in the chat, if you open it up, just drop your question anytime. We'll get those at the end of the presentation. So let's start off with some of the headlines that we're seeing in the news so far. Let's start off in the top left here, right, where we're actually seeing some brick and mortar start to come back. Very famously, right, a lot of companies with the start of things like Amazon and eBay started thinking more about e-retail. But now we're seeing a restrained comeback to brick and mortar. I think famously even Amazon.com was starting to open some brick and mortar shops. This is very different than what they used to be before. But again, we're seeing some of those trends start to happen again. And that obviously comes back with some very interesting technology applications that need to happen for that to take place. We'll go all the way to the bottom left here. Our favorite coffee shop, right, is exploring ways to actually make the customer experience a little bit more pleasant. So we're trying to shorten the time from when you order to actually get your products in line or in the shops, the coffee shops, right? Switching gears a little bit, let's go top right here. We see there a Harvard Business Review article that was published relatively recently, talking about what does it mean when we have a talent or labor shortage, and what are the things that we can actually do for that. So a lot of that comes from technology and where we can actually start applying some of those tools and some creative thinking and strategies to actually deal with that. I think post-COVID, this has become a hot topic that we've all probably heard about at this point. Let's move a little bit more into kind of the middle section here, the just-in-time inventory there at the top middle. Another article then published by Reuters there talking about what does it actually mean to have more efficient or optimized operations in the back of the house, right? There's definitely risk in keeping a lot of backstock and risk with warehouses and all kind of stuff, right? So thinking about just-in-time inventory that I think has also famously been popularized through things like Agile, at least in the technology and data space, right? We're seeing this more or bleed into the actual retail industry more and more of the operations side of things. Other things that we're also seeing as trends in the industry, right smack in the middle there, are different ways to actually think about your revenue streams. So the famous no-show fees, right? This happens, to me at the dentist or when I take my kid to the doctor, right? There's a little note at the bottom of your appointment that says, if you don't show, there's going to be X amount of dollar fee for anyone who doesn't show or cancel their appointment within a certain amount of time, right? So these are ways that you can actually protect your revenue streams. There's both kind of a reduction of cost here, but also making sure that we're also optimizing and making sure that the revenue streams continue to come in. And kind of the last one here, right, that we just kind of talk at a high level with is in general, productivity, pricing, those things like that, right? Like where is it that we're actually seeing a decrease in the revenue stream, things like theft or high rents or staffing problems, right? Like that all kind of revolves around the same topic there. So again, a few of the different trends that we're seeing in the industry from headline news. Later on, Brian here in a few minutes is going to focus on 3 specific examples, being customer experience and retention, financial analysis, and the inventory problems that we actually are seeing. And next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit more empirically about these trends, not just in headlines, and start off with the top right quadrant here with data monetization. So we're actually seeing in the retail industry data being leveraged to improve all sorts of things, from the shopping experience to finding enhanced insights for retailers, more nuanced understanding for shoppers, and all of that then culminates in competitive advantages for your organization. To the tune of 70% of decision makers are now relying more on external data. So I think long gone are the days now where you're focusing only on the data that your organization produces, or what we used to call internal data, right? Now the kind of blending and use of external pieces of information is also becoming much more common. Even 50% of all digital marketing campaigns are now actually using third-party data to enhance their targeting and performance. So that's definitely, you can see different parallels there of not just focusing on your internal information, but seeing where else we can find value from a data source perspective. Moving down to tools, there's a trend here towards more end-to-end solutions. So not using different kind of tools for one-offs or specific use cases, but thinking about this more holistically, where we can actually implement one ecosystem or one tool set from like one provider, and where can that one specific kind of source for technology be used in end-to-end. There's also, along with that, a consolidation of your data repositories. So I think we're all familiar with having different silos of data, different sources of data, right? Where we can combine these, that becomes a lot more powerful so that we can actually pull information, not only from a technology standpoint, but also from an insight perspective for our end users who are actually going to be making decisions and creating insights from the raw data. Moving into the data strategy quadrant here in the bottom left, we're seeing a lot of shifting now from making sure that your business strategy is aligning to your data management, data governance strategy as well, right? So a lot of times we would used to use data for specific questions or, again, kind of one-off situations or spin-offs, right? Now there's definitely more of a concerted effort to actually look at the entire business perspective and seeing how data applies to that. This results usually in future proofing, so not creating, small proof of concepts that don't go anywhere or don't have traction, right? But really understanding the business needs and making sure that's aligning to the solutions that we're building with technology. And lastly, the big one here on the top left are Gen BI and AI quadrant, which again, Brian's going to talk about here in a couple minutes. This is the big one, right? This is the game changer. So we're seeing 50% of retail executives now actually using AI to drive personalization for their customers. That's a huge number, right? There's been an explosion of AI and Gen BI recently, and we're actually seeing this now in the industry, in organizations as well, start to take hold pretty strongly. Not only that, but we're already seeing numbers to the tune of 45% of retailers who were surveyed. I think this was a 2024 survey for top retail trends. We're already seeing 45% of retailers who are actually reporting that they already have increased employee retention, increased profits, and increase in their automation investments. So not only is it moving more towards that, but already we're seeing the benefits of using Gen BI and AI. And lastly, I think the general trend for Gen BI and AI here is that those kind of tools can actually increase your operational efficiency. And then that leads to better customer and human interaction, which is, I think, a lot of the new trend for the consumer is that's exactly what they're looking for, right? They want to be a valued customer and they want to have those genuine interactions. And AI and Gen BI helps us to speed that up from an organizational perspective as well. And with that, I will turn it over to Brian to actually walk through some of the demos and look at some concrete examples.
Yeah, thanks, Eduardo. I think we're going to talk about next, some of those tools specifically, and in particular, we're going to be looking at Amazon's QuickSight tool and the Generative BI, which is a generative AI incorporated into BI and analytics. And that's going to be this service called Q, that is Amazon Q in QuickSight. So we're going to see a number of videos here that I'm going to introduce and show you some examples with our hypothetical sports retailer franchise, and we're focused on a sports retailer. Brick and mortar stores is the focus here, and we're going to show how you can use QuickSight and then how you can use this generative BI capability to then perform analyses in some of these specific topics that have been brought up in retail operations, and how you can use it to gain insight into your own retail operations and see the applicability to your business. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the customer experience. We talked about wait time as being an issue that we're seeing as staffing is struggling with get appointments dealt with. And so in our retailer here, we're going to look at appointments that people have to come and get fittings and shoe sizes and other equipment fit at the sports retailer. So let me start that.
When stores have in-person services, they will often have customers set appointments in advance. When the customer arrives and checks in, they may still have some wait time before they can get their desired service. If they walk out before then, that is a direct indicator that their customer experience was not good. Long wait times often drive these walkouts and poor in-store experiences when customers have made appointments. So we keep data on both metrics. Our retail sporting goods store offers appointments for bike repairs, shoe and gear fitting, such as hiking packs, golf club fitting, even personalized services for planning outdoor adventures. Let's take a look at how we can analyze the data around customer behavior and customer experience with these appointments. So starting from our Amazon QuickSight retail dashboard, we can navigate to our tab for analyzing customer experience. And here we have a collection of visuals and KPIs. This first bar chart is showing the average wait time at each of our store locations. And both from these visual and the KPI to the left, we can see the average across all locations, and therefore be able to identify our top and bottom stores by this metric. So of course, in this case, a higher wait time is a bad thing. So our so-called top stores are the ones with the lowest wait times, while our bottom stores have longer waits. Additionally, if we scroll down to see the below visual, we have a few KPIs and visuals for a different but related metric, tracking what percentage of our customers walked out before having their appointments. This stacked 100% bar chart to the right shows this metric broken down by store, while the gauge chart shows the overall walk-in retention percentage, which is just the reverse of the walkout metric.
Yeah, now actually analyzing the data in these visuals, we can see a few stores that have a concerning average wait time, with the worst store of 38 having a much longer wait time than the overall average. In order to investigate further, we can click on this bar to filter for this store's data. As this filter is applied to the other visuals on the screen, we can scroll back down and see the effects of this long wait time reflected in the high walkout percentage or low retention percentage. And this represents a loss in revenue for every customer that decides to leave rather than wait for their appointment. So we've identified an issue and know that we want to target reducing wait times, but we can continue exploring our data to come up with a more specific action plan.
Following what Jackson had just mentioned, while these visuals are focused on wait times across entire stores, we know that we have different departments within our stores that track their wait times individually. So we can explore the breakdown of wait time by department by asking Q, what is the average wait time by department for store 38 in 2023? From this visual, we can clearly see which departments are contributing to the high overall wait time. In this case, it's men's shoes, bags, and backpacks, and travel gear, which all have high average wait times.
Now that we've identified which departments have the longest wait times, we can attempt to take action to address this. Ultimately, more staff will be required to service more customers, therefore reducing queuing and wait times. So we could try and reallocate staffing across departments to the 3 identified with longer wait times. However, before we take this action, we want to understand more about the value in revenue for appointments in these departments, because perhaps our appointments in a department like bags and backpacks are less impactful than appointments in whatever department we would be taking staff from to address the bags and backpack wait times.
Continuing further, the way we measure the value of an appointment is in a metric that we call upsell, which represents all of the items that a person purchases during their visit for their appointment. So when a customer comes in the door for their appointment, they're more likely to buy more products in the same trip. Whereas, of course, if they walk out from their appointment because they're waiting too long, then that's lost revenue. Knowing that we have that metric, we can now update our Q question to ask for the upsell by department. What becomes immediately obvious is that our appointments in sports equipment are resulting in by far the most upsell, meaning that those appointments are the most valuable in terms of revenue generated for the store.
And having some measurement for appointment value allows us to make a more appropriate prioritization for how we should be handling staffing to address wait times. So while we may take action to address wait times in the previously identified departments, we can make sure that we're also keeping the upsell in mind, so we aren't taking staff away from our most important or most profitable departments.
Yeah, so what you saw there was the use of QuickSight to see some initial visuals, and then diving into using Q and the natural language processing of the generative BI that runs under the hood to be able to bring up and do deep dive analysis. So we're also going to apply that to a financial analysis. You know, we did a customer experience in terms of wait time. We're also going to look at financial analysis. This is going to include some examples of using generative BI to actually author your dashboard and update and include new visuals and metrics in your capability here. Oops. One of the interesting things about retail is that there's multiple stores, and that looking at the financial metrics of different stores can actually yield insights into the operations of those different stores and what's working well and what's not. And we'll bring up the dashboard here, and if we scroll down to the sales by store, we can see a display on the visuals here that shows the financial performance by store sorted by the rank. And the number one store is store number one, well and away the highest performer. And if we highlight that, and if we can see the numbers associated with it, and then we can also right click and drill down on that to look at additional breakdown of information about that particular store. So that now switches over to an additional breakdown tab that has other visualizations.
Part of this additional breakdown is looking at the neighborhood where the store is located, using average home values as an indicator of the local market. We can see from the visuals on the left that the average home value for the city is about 800,000, which is over 2 times the national average, indicated by the mark at around 330,000. This is a key metric for understanding store performance, as the local population and wealth can influence the level of interest in the products. So knowing that this is in New York, which is of course highly populated and a wealthier area, makes sense as to why the store is seeing the highest sales. But one key metric that's missing from this analysis is profit margin. Focusing purely on sales doesn't provide the full context for store success, as even with high sales volumes, if there are also higher expenses, then we may have lower margins and ultimately less profit. Now this metric isn't currently in our dashboard, but let's take a look at how we can add it.
So first, we're going to have to switch over to the analysis mode, which is the authoring, as if you're an author persona, to be able to edit stuff. And you can see over on the left all the different variables that are involved in our data. And you can see right a visualization of what the dashboard looks like currently. And so what we're going to do is we're going to add a new variable for the profit margin. And we're going to build a calculation. So this is our first leveraging of Q here. And we're going to just say that we want to have the sales profit margin as a new variable. And Q will actually recognize this profit margin and recognize the formula, because a profit margin is a fairly common metric for people to use. So it actually suggests a formula we have there that has the total of the sales minus the cost of goods and services divided by the subtotal of the sales. And that is the profit margin calculation that we want. So we will accept that formula that it's recommended, and we will insert that as a variable. You can see it shows the code that it's going to be using for that. And then we need to give it a name so that it can be in our data set, and we'll call it sales profit margin. And then we will save that variable. And now when we go back out to the analysis mode, we can see the sales profit margin is now in our data set here, and we can make a visual out of it. We'll also leverage Q here to make a visual out of this data. And in this case, we're going to look on the Q here, build a visual, and we're going to enter in the sales profit margin. And we're going to do it by month, because we want to have a visual that shows it over time to go along with some of our other time series data.
Here we can see the result of our query. So Q was able to interpret our question and created a chart showing the company profit margin over time, which is exactly what we were looking for. This is no longer looking at just a single store, but it does give us a better understanding of the health of the business as a whole. And we can see that our profit margin remains relatively stable over time. Though we could continue to build on this visual and apply filters if we wanted to continue our individual store comparisons.
We're going to add that as the time series, so add that to the analysis. And it appears as a graph down at the bottom here, and we're able to adjust it to fit it onto the page correctly so that it lines up with the other charts and visuals. And then we can save and publish that. And that gets us, that will get us a new dashboard once we publish that out. And now we have a whole new dashboard. If we go to the summary page that we were doing our editing on as the author, and we can now see at the bottom here, we've now got that new variable that we created. And we didn't have to enter a single line of code. We simply asked Q for the sales profit margin. It suggested a formula. Then we asked for a visual of that by month, and it gave us a visualization of that. And we simply added it to the dashboard. So that's the ability to add something to a dashboard, something like that, in just literally seconds is sort of the power of Q here. So one other thing we want to show with Q is to build a data story off of some of this new information. So this is a nice capability that AI now provides via Q in QuickSight. So if we select data story, let's bring up a new dialog here. And over on the right, it'll ask, what kind of story do we want? And so we're going to enter in there what kind of story we want. In this case, we're going to ask, show me the sales profit margin and sales by month. Again, we're not going to enter any code or anything here. We're going to select some visuals for it to work off of and say, we think that this is probably relevant. And we want to add in our new margin calculation visualization and say, this is something we want to include in the data story. And we check that off. And then we say, go and build a story, build a report based on the information that you see in those visuals. And again, this is the Amazon AI behind Q that's now running through this interface that we have in QuickSight. And the sales starts comes up. And what it'll do is start to populate the story. So we already get a seasonal sales. So it understood we were looking at this by month. And so it's looking at the seasonal patterns in the time series, provides a little introduction just to, what might be going into business. It pulls in the graphics we gave. So it's got the sales by month over year with some forecasting in there. And it has the new graphic that we included. And it has a little description for people to read on this data story that was written.
So looking at this narrative here, it's sort of summarizing this visual and providing some textual insights into what we're seeing. So it highlights some peaks and troughs, where profit margin fluctuated in particular months, and it even provides recommendations based on these insights. Specifically, it calls out that we can analyze this trend to identify months with historically lower margins to really focus our marketing and promotional efforts.
All right, so that was a preview of how you can use Q in particular to develop new metrics and new visuals that you can embed into your dashboards to be able to look at different aspects of your business that are relevant. And if I can advance this to the next. One of the interesting things about retail is that there's so the next topic is going to be on inventory. Obviously, we saw a lot of supply chain shocks over the last few years. So managing inventory, especially for real brick and mortar stores, is a real challenge. So keeping on top of that is an important subject. So we're going to show again some QuickSight and Q on how you can use that to start to look at your inventory and be able to dive into it without by using Q. Obviously, monitoring your merchandise, when it is selling, where it is selling, what is selling best are all very key pieces of information to have for successful retail operations. So if we bring up our dashboard for our sports retail company here, we can look at the sales history. We see the sales total in dollars and the sales history time series over time with a little bit of a forecast going forward. But we're interested in digging down into that and into what products are selling well. And we actually have a visualization for that as well. If we scroll down a little bit, you can see over on the left-hand side, we have what's called a word cloud, where the most popular products by their sales are highlighted in larger fonts. So you can see which ones are selling the most.
Now looking closer at the word cloud visual, the largest product, and therefore the one responsible for driving the most sales and revenue, is mountain bikes. And having identified this as one of our top products, we want to dig deeper and explore additional details about that product's sales.
And this is where we can start to use Q to start asking kind of those ad hoc questions that lead us into analysis. So if we bring up Q, we can go ahead and ask it, first we switch over to doing the inventory topic to give it some context. We're going to be asking Q about inventory. And then we say, show me the mountain bike sales by month. And let's see what the time series of mountain bike sales look like so we can see how it's going. Q will understand our question. It understands natural language. It understands what we're asking for. And it brings up some visuals that it thinks is relevant to us.
Now looking closer at the first visual, we can see that sales have been generally increasing over the last few years, which of course is a positive trend. But we're also seeing what appears to be seasonal fluctuations, as we're seeing a cyclical rise and fall in sales on a yearly basis. Now this is something we expect for sports products like bikes, where we expect more sales during months with better weather, like in spring and summertime, when people are more likely to use outdoor equipment. But to the right of the sales over time visual, there's also a map where we can see the hotspots for where this product is selling the most, with states with more sales appearing as larger dots in the visual. So one of the larger dots is over California, which is not only a large state with a high population, but it's also known for its nice weather and has a substantial region with mountainous terrain. So we expect this state to be a big market for the product, but now we want to look even closer on a more granular level.
And so we want to dig into what's going on in California. And we don't need to write any code. We don't need to do anything like that. All we need to do is modify our original question to Q, and we can simply add that we're interested in California at the end of our question here and have Q bring up the new relevant data sets for that. And it brings up the visuals again. It shows the time series by month. And it also shows us a map of the state and all the different stores in the state. There's several different stores in the California area.
So by adjusting our query, we've now honed in on the single state. And from looking at the updated map visual, we can see where our stores are located and see that San Francisco has the largest dot, indicating that most sales for mountain bikes in the state are coming from the store in that city. This is a surprising insight and actually goes against what we would expect, as San Francisco actually has a significantly smaller population than Los Angeles and is generally in a less mountainous area. But having surfaced this insight, we can now take action, like adjusting our marketing campaigns, as this suggests that any marketing we've been doing in that area hasn't been effective, so we can make changes to better reach our target consumers in the region. But this product analysis that we just conducted demonstrates how we can use Amazon QuickSight dashboards to explore our data and go one step further with additional ad hoc analysis through Q's Q&A functionality.
So you saw in that video an example of sort of drilling into your data and digging further down, again, just using Q. If we want to talk about just the highlights on Q, the ability to use Q and use the AI that lives behind Q to have generative BI, be able to ask questions in natural language, get responses back. You can drill down to the data, you can summarize the data, you can drill into a state like we saw there, you can drill into an individual store. All of these are capabilities that Q gives you, and you can do this sort of thing without writing any code. Create new visuals for your dashboard, create a new KPI that you need to follow for your particular business. And you even saw an example of generating even long-form reports without writing code, without anything. You just have the AI do it behind the scenes. So it really is a powerful tool. It leverages QuickSight as the Amazon BI service. Uses Q, then the Amazon Q provides an AI layer that gives you generative BI capability within that. So hopefully that's a good example of how you can leverage Amazon tools to look at your retail analysis and the analysis of your retail businesses, and how you can get insights using AI and generative BI. I know we've got a little bit of time left here for questions. So didn't know if we had any questions. I apologize in case of the chat, but I think we've got some moderators who can.
So Brian, yes, we do have a couple questions that have come in. One is, could Q potentially work with our existing data sources?
Yeah, it should be able to. The Amazon tools can connect with all kinds of business enterprise data platforms. Whether you've got your data in S3, obviously is a big one with Amazon, but also if you've got data stored in external things like Salesforce, or if you've got Snowflake for your data warehousing, other enterprise data tools are connectable to ingest into QuickSight and then use for all of the analysis you saw here.
And the next one is, what kind of legwork is required to set up Q in an environment?
So obviously you need to have an Amazon account, but once you have the Amazon account, it's fairly straightforward. You can set up the crawlers to go and identify the data you want to ingest into Q. And like I said, that can connect to a bunch of different data sources, both structured data warehouses as well as things like S3. And so you have Q crawl across that, Q ingest those data, and then you start to build out your dashboards to define the visuals. And you can do them with Q, as you saw there, to define questions directly, or you can do them manually. You probably have a Q, you may have existing reports or existing visuals that you use for your KPI analysis, and those can be developed manually. The QuickSight tool as a BI tool has been around for many years. It has all the capability you would expect from a BI tool. So all of that is already available. And if that's something you need help with, and it's something Ironside has, over 20 years of experience, 25 years of experience doing BI solutions. So that's certainly get in touch with us if you need help setting up. But QuickSight is, a standard Amazon tool that's been around for a while. We really wanted to highlight the Q capability and how it can make it much easier to build out a QuickSight dashboard.
Yeah, I'll just add, for how sophisticated that technology is, it is relatively simple to actually set up. So don't let that scare anyone away, right? We're happy to help. So if you do need any kind of help or insights or even a quick conversation, feel free to use the contact info on the screen here, and we'd be more than happy to schedule a quick call to see where you are in your data journey and see where we can help.
Same with migrations. One of the advantages of Q is that it can scale cost effectively, much better than many of the other solutions out in the market. And we get a lot of clients who are trying to reduce costs by migrating away from existing BI tools and onto QuickSight. And that's something we've helped many clients with. So that's an area we can certainly help with if that's the issue you're facing.
All right, I think we're just about time there. So thank you everyone for coming. Again, thank you for spending your lunchtime here with us. And please reach out if you do have any further questions or would like to schedule a quick call to see where we can help with QuickSight Q or anything else data related. Thanks all.
Thank you.